Is it time? Yeah, it's time. Welcome to the True Craft Podcast. I am your host, Chris Farman, and I'm joined by co-host, Katy Noel. This time around, we are all about one thing: killer conversations with close friends about the state of craft. Oh, it's going to be good. I hope to open the box on fresh topics while honoring the path that got us here. Let's do it. All right, so we're back. We're back to a new episode of the True Craft Podcast. And today our guest is a co-founder from Atlanta, Georgia, and the brewery name is Elsewhere Brewing, Sam Kazmer. Welcome, Sam.
Hey, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, dude. So tell us how has the summer been in Atlanta?
It's been super hot, crazy storms, kind of the typical summer in the South. Business has definitely been slower across the board this year, but we've been super busy with opening up a second location. So hot outside and then just hot in the business, like kind of working around the clock right now. So it's exciting.
How old is Elsewhere Brewing? How many years have you been in business?
This October will be 3 years.
3 years.
So, yeah, we got our doors open finally in October of 2020. It was kind of a weird process. It literally closed on our SBA loan and started construction on like March 10th of 2020, and then everything started to fall apart after that.
Yep.
So good timing in some ways. I don't know if we would have been able to get a permit or even secure funding after things started getting weird with COVID. So
yeah, definitely. I'm so close to the Georgia beer scene because of where I'm located geographically, and you know, there's been two waves in the Georgia beer scene, right? It was the people that started back in the early 2010, 2015 area where they couldn't even have a flipping tap room, right?
Right. Yeah, we're definitely kind of in that second phase right now.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I would say you guys definitely opened in that second phase. And so I'm just always curious as to the breweries that had to start with just the tastings and just the tours and really had to fight for something huge to get those tap rooms open. It was when I would talk to customers that were on the West Coast and be like, Georgia can't even have a tap room. They'd be like, what are you talking about?
What do you mean? Yeah, I mean, I was living out on the West Coast back then. I was stationed at Fort Lewis in Tacoma, Washington. And yeah, I'm from Georgia, so we'd come home to visit my parents, and it would be like, oh, let's check out a brewery because that's what you do out west in Washington State. And here it was like you're using wooden coins to like pay for beers. It was just a very very weird scenario. But you know, breweries made it work.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean you're using wooden coins? What?
Yeah, like you do a tour and then they give you little tokens because you can't actually conduct a monetary transaction for alcohol per se. You're paying for a tour, and then part of that tour is samples. So that's kind of how they got around. Not really got around. That's just kind of what the law forced, business owners to do.
Is that still happening?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't have opened up in the state.
Brewery?
Yeah. There might be some floating around there, but not to pay for beer. I accept all the major credit cards in cash.
I was like, I gotta double check. Is like I'm from the West Coast, so I'm like, coins? People pay with
until
coins
until 2017, end of 2017 is when that law changed. So it's a relatively new development. But that's kind of why the beer scene, in my opinion, is kind of interesting in Georgia from just a development stage, because most states by 2017, you're getting to the peak or past the peak in terms of like growth, whereas in Georgia we kind of just started just late to the game.
Yep. And I would say the Atlanta beer scene, the Atlanta Athens beer scene is one to be reckoned with. There's a lot of really good players in that area, and it's the rising tides brings up all ships idea. You had a few of the Monday nights, the Creature Comforts, the guys that just showed up with amazing business, amazing beer,
Yeah.
and it's been a race to, spin off some sort of business that they've forged the way for. So
Yeah.
uh,
It's been interesting. Those two in particular are kind of interesting because it seems like they're both kind of going down somewhat different paths. Monday Night's kind of interesting with all their multiple retail locations, but they still have a distribution presence. Whereas, Creature, they just leaned into the distro. They own Georgia, essentially.
right.
And then they do have the second location they're opening in LA. But the ones that opened up back in the day, it's been interesting to see how the ones that have survived are pivoting and kind of shifting with the changes in the distribution retail markets, just simply stay alive or thrive. It's been
Yeah.
pretty interesting to watch.
So today I want to get into more about risk and taking risks in the beer scene and the owning a brewery and what it all entails. But
Mhm.
before we do that, I want a personal history on you. I just read the email this morning from you that said you went to West Point.
Yep, I graduated from West Point 2011. Grew up down here in Georgia, so I basically just right after I graduated high school,
Yeah.
um, showed up there. I had no real military history in my family. I was the first one to go to West Point. And then my brother went to West Point too, so we both ended up going there 2 years apart. So that's where it all started.
And where did you go? What were your obligations, or what did you do after West Point?
So I became a second lieutenant. That's what happens if you're healthy enough, like if you can pass all your physicals. So yeah, I commissioned as a second lieutenant as an infantry officer.
Mm-hmm.
My plan was to become a helicopter pilot, but my depth perception got me disqualified, so I couldn't fly helicopters, and I was like, I guess I'll go jump out of airplanes instead. And ended up my first duty station was in Italy. So I lived in Vicenza, Italy for like 2 years as like a 23-year-old. It was pretty sick. But yeah, deployed once from the 173rd out in Italy. And then after that, I ended up getting a job with the 2nd Ranger Battalion out in Washington State, which is why I was out there, and then did a couple more deployments with them. And then had this pretty insane injury during a training event. Parachute collapsed and broke a bunch of bones. And then
Oh,
that kind of is what shifted everything to the brewery route. Kind of over the course of that was back in 2015. So kind of over the course of that recovery, ended up home brewing to as I was starting to walk again. And it was kind of like extra. I would, make a sandwich one day and then slowly worked my way up to making like 5-gallon batches of beer.
nice.
And then yeah, by the time I had those first few batches done, I was able to drink beer again. And then yeah, like kind of had to completely change the plan. And that's when Sarah and I started to look at potentially getting into craft beer.
And what's your role at the brewery? Like, what does your day to day look like?
Yeah, I'm the CEO, and then I also handle all the finance side of things. So I guess I'm the CFO as well, and then
Mm-hmm.
also the guy that shows up with tools to fix stuff. So if I can, but yeah, I fill gaps where they are present, and then I'm heavily responsible for kind of the growth and future business. I'd say I'm the one that jumps into the pool first and then checks things out. And Sarah is more on the ground of she's with me in that, but she's also definitely way more responsible for kind of the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month operations.
Yep.
And I just make sure that can all happen from a financial standpoint, and try to get the business to a more sustainable, healthy place. So.
So you guys have a brew crew? You don't do much of the brewing yourself anymore?
No, we've got one guy, Josh Watterson. He's been with us from the very beginning. Back in 2018, we kind of our first plan didn't work out with the partners we were, and the plan just in general didn't work out. And we started working with Josh, found him on probrewer.com. replied to our advertisement.
Yes.
He's won a few gold medals at the Great American Beer Festival, and then is also just generally a mechanical mastermind. So yeah, our interest in beer and craft and the industry in general really aligned. He started as a consultant for us and then moved into the full-time role when we opened, which was kind of like our ideal scenario, and that ended up working out.
Yep. I remember so many breweries that would commit to a brewer 6 months before they got open, and the brewer would be like, "Paycheck, bro."
That is always a challenge, and I'm going through that right now,
Right.
with opening a new place where just kind of the cash demands are large and just land, for it's, oh, I got to write a $150,000 check today, and it's like, well, that's usually what my bank account's sitting at, and so it's like just kind of managing that cash flow. We've got really great financing partners, a lot more flexible than last time, which was more of an SBA 7A loan.
Yep.
For new entrepreneurs, great vehicle for getting money. It's an easier way to get debt in terms of just your ability to with limited assets and stuff like that. So the original raise was all friends and family plus the SBA loan, and this one has been a little more flexible with some private money, and it's made the cash flow management a little bit easier.
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. Well, so let's talk about that. You're 4 days out from an opening of a new second location. 3 days, 4.
3 to 4.
You're 3 to 4 days out from an opening of a second location, and you wanted to talk about risk and reward and really calculated risk. And I love that topic, because whenever us at Small Batch talk about risk, I think the definition of risk or the definition of profit comes from risk, right? Or vice versa. The definition of risk is something that you take, and the potential is profit. The potential is also the flip side of profit.
Failure. Yeah.
So
insolvency. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about what goes through your mind when you're assessing a project, a risk project. Even talk us through the second location and what happened there.
Definitely. I mean that the second location has been kind of just like I said, it took 2 years. So originally we had, it was during the pandemic. We had a lot of influx of capital from the government, with really no strings attached. Business was actually, relative to now, really good. Like this year, we've seen 15 to 20% reductions in just revenue across the board. But back then, we had an influx of cash. The business was generating enough revenue to a point where we could find a path to profitability then. And so really, I saw all of this money in the savings account and was like, we should need to do something with this. And to me, it was just opportunity cost every day we didn't do something with it. Part of it I needed to retain just, the rainy day fund, because there was so much uncertainty back in 2021, and then 2022 as well. And so for me, it was we have enough capital right now to start to explore some new opportunities. There's a lot of uncertainty in the future, and so we were such a young business that it seemed like we needed to take some risks to make the business a little more durable if things got weird, which they did in 2023 and the tail end of 2022. So like for us, it started to look in 2022. So anyways, I tried to finance the first project the same way we did the original one, kind of with an SBA loan. The banks, it was my first experience dealing with a bank when I had a business running, and just, it's not about projections anymore, it's about performance.
Right.
And I was like, this has been a weird year. This is to be expected. And, bank, it just wasn't the right tool for financing the project. And we actually backed away from it at the tail end of 2021. The developer came back, was essentially like, we can, put together some kind of, note or something like that that's flexible in the way that you can pay it back, reducing the risk kind of from a carrying debt perspective. And then just the rate was fixed. It ended up more or less being an offer I couldn't refuse. That's kind of the way I was trying to phrase it with the developers, was like, I would love to be here. There's so much uncertainty and risk in this environment that, I need to be able to retain as much of my capital as possible. And so I'm not going to be able to put really much of any money into this project. And
Right.
when they said yes to that, I mean, it's kind of like, it was a no-brainer for me. I was like, even if the second place takes a year or two to develop, the way that we'll be servicing this debt is going to be so flexible based on net income. We're going to be able to spread the overhead out from the first location and essentially just run super lean. And just, taking that step, it was really all about looking at, what was the business at Grant Park, the original location, like what was it producing on a month-to-month basis? If we were to see a 10% reduction in that revenue, like what would that do to the company? And it was really ugly. And so I was just like, well, we have to do something about this. And the potential at Grant Park is there, but the things that are required to see that potential fully play out, there's two huge things that have to happen. And we need the belt line to be complete. If you're not familiar with the belt line, it's just like a big walking, biking path that goes around the city of Atlanta. It's been a new project, I'd say, over the last 10 years or so. But we're right next to the belt line down on the southern side, which is getting finished now for the last 3 years. And it's probably going to be finished sometime in, I'd say, 2025. It's a big project, but I can't control that. And then the development itself is going through a huge redevelopment with new developers, and it's all very good, but it's also still another year and a half out. And so when I signed my lease in 2019, I didn't project 6 years of like struggling to get by. I was expecting, probably 2 to 3 years of scraping by, but then kind of assuming that we were providing value and a good product, it seemed like all the external circumstances should kind of allow us to get to the growth projections we were going for, just based on population and foot traffic and competition in the area. But started to see that maybe not going to be the case. And then, when you open your business, when we first opened our business back in October of 2020, it was, you start to see what reality is versus just the pro forma.
Right.
And that's kind of where you start to see, like, how much money do you really need at the beginning of every month? And it just started to look like, unless we really reduced costs in a way that required two different ways. We either had to like fundamentally change the business model we were running to be honest, to a model I wasn't really sure what it would look like, or we needed to find a satellite location in an effort to spread out overhead and sell more of our highest margin product, which is our beer. So we just weren't getting the volume that we needed at the first location, and the writing was on the wall. I knew I could string together some money to get us to the second opening. But I just knew that it would have to happen within a certain amount of time. And so for me, it was like, take the maximum amount of risk as possible.
The spidey sense that you just described is what makes or breaks entrepreneurs. It's what makes or breaks careers. It's a spidey sense that not every business owner has. I call it Chris math because I have the same spidey sense, right? I calculate things in black and white. It's elementary as F, dude. It's so elementary. And that's basically what you just laid out to the listeners. I did some elementary, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? Black, white, no gray.
Yeah.
And your Sam math came back as like, this ain't going to work.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at just kind of where our labor cost percentage was. And I started doing this like in a real serious way. I'd say like probably Q2, Q3 of 2022. Because that is definitely when the government money started to shut off. That's definitely when demand started to pull back a little bit from a consumer standpoint. And it was like, all right, well, now it's time to we have to really run this business now. And I'm looking at my labor percentage, and I'm looking at where I can flex. It's like
Yep.
I can stop paying myself, I can stop paying Sarah. I can change the kitchen model a bit. I can find a way to reduce like a GM salary. But we were operating at what felt like min force almost. And or like I couldn't reduce the payroll much more, not
Yep.
enough to make it like within the range where I needed it to. And so like for me, I was like, unless things, get a lot better here, and now I'm just rolling dice, like we need to at least try to like make it better ourselves. And to me, the second, like, it was distribution or it was the second location. And like I opened this business knowing distribution wasn't going to be an option
Yeah.
for solving the kinds of problems that I needed to solve. And it was, you know, I I don't have a ton of people. I don't have a ton of like excess capacity. So I don't have the ability to produce more myself. Um, Contract brewing is just not going to give me the net income from the revenue that I need. And so I just needed to find a way to just have higher, more high margin sales.
Yep.
And the second location was the really the only viable option that I saw at the time.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you just took us on a crazy journey. Honestly, you just took us from you're opening a second location in September of 2023, when most people really aren't opening a second location, and backing us into that thought, that thinking and your thought process of what you've gone through. Like my anxiety level just went down. Right. I didn't
Yeah,
have anxiety because I know you, but if I was a listener, I'd be like, eh, and then they're like, oh, this makes a whole lot
everybody thought I was insane. Um,
I
and
don't
like
think so.
they're just like my landlords, obviously the bank, um, some of my investors. But when I explained it like that, it made sense to them.
Yep.
And if you
Just
find somebody that agrees with you and can write the checks for you, then you've got a team and you can try to accomplish a project.
right. So OG location is in the south part of like Metro Atlanta, up and coming neighborhood, up and coming Beltline. You have a what size barrel system?
We have a 10-barrel system over there.
So 10-barrel system, tap room. You have a little bit of food as well.
Yep, got a
Uh,
kitchen, which has been a
Kitchen.
super fun time.
Yeah. For another show.
Yeah.
Describe the second location that's opening this week.
So the second location is it's no kitchen, but it's in a like a retail development. It's called West Side Paper. Kind of like a shared courtyard with like 5 or 6 different food vendors right off the bat. We'll kind of be the beer, and we'll have the liquor option. There'll be a couple other places that I think might sell some cocktails, but we're going to be kind of the primary alcohol for this little development. So in a way, it's like it's a perfect situation for me. Like I need the food. I need the food to keep the people there, and to kind of just pull people in more often, during their pattern of life in a day. There's more people eating food than there is, drinking alcohol in any moment of the day. So having the food is kind of essential for that. But having done and I almost went down the food route over here. And that was another, I'd say, spidey-sense moment where around the same time that we were going, or I was realizing that the way we were running the kitchen at the first location was just not sustainable. We're trying to do too much. We're trying to get too sexy with the food.
Mm-hmm.
That was the moment when Sarah and I were also starting to build out the floor plan and stuff for the second spot. So there was a moment there where we were about to go down food lane, and I just remember being in an unusual position with our current chef at the time, just feeling very vulnerable, and as if like if this person didn't want to be a part of the company anymore, it would really tank us. And I was like, why would I just make that if I open up another food concept over here and I'm not really comfortable with the food concept at the first place, I'm doubling down on a bet that I really don't feel confident about. And so for me, it was like, what do we believe in? What can we make work? And it's like, let's do the beer. There's other food there. I'm trying to keep the build out down, the cost. I'm just trying to keep all those startup costs down as well. So for me, it was I don't want to operate with a kitchen if I don't have to. I didn't have to. I need to keep costs down, so that when I'm servicing this debt, it's not going to break me. And I need to keep the payroll down, just to keep that payroll percentage where I need it. I can only add so much overhead on it the second place, to be where I need to be. So that's kind of why we didn't do the food there.
Is the second location situated near a lot of living or retail, residential?
Yeah, it's in West Midtown, so it's one of the faster growing areas in Atlanta. You're getting a lot of high density residential, which is so a lot of building up. Not a ton of like, single family homes, more like townhouses, condos, tons of apartments, that kind of stuff. So it's rapidly growing and it's going to be high density.
Are the food options around you fast casual, or are they come sit and wait for a table service?
A little bit of both. So some of the spaces still need to be leased out, but they will be for kind of more like a cornerstone full service kind of restaurant. And then there's going to be a pizza place, there's a taco joint, there's a fried chicken sandwich place, which is more kind of the grab and go, hang out in the courtyard, grab a beer at Elsewhere. We've got like a window you can just come up to and we can hand you a beer. There's like a liquor license open container at the whole development. So yeah, it definitely is conducive to like kind of shopping around for whatever you want to do, from a food beverage standpoint on a particular afternoon or evening.
Awesome.
Yeah. Another really cool thing that I got going here at the second spot is part of my experience at Grant Park. I call it like a field. I use the movie Field of Dreams kind of as a comparison, and the phrase or the line from the movie, "If you build it, they will come." And so many people in craft beer, mostly because it was true for a very long time. If you build it, they will come. If you build it in the industrial park out in the middle of nowhere, but it's $8 a square foot for rent, it's like that's fine. People will drive 20 minutes into like an office park and eventually find you, and you'll keep your overhead low, and we're just like not in that scenario anymore. In fact, like even in like my Grant Park location, it's like on paper this should be like heavily foot trafficked, and it's not. And it's because just having craft beer, high quality craft beer, is just simply not enough. And it's not enough to get people out of their houses. It's not novel enough. It's not interesting enough to stand on its own. And so definitely learned that the hard way at the first place. And I've got some things developing over there that after this project is done, I'm shifting focus back over there to start to make some of these changes over there. But here we had the developer build a bunch of pickleball courts right behind our space, and it's in this big covered kind of like old garage area, but it's open air. Literally the back doors of our place open right up into these pickleball courts. And so in my mind, I started seeing how pickleball was taking off. Linked up with the Atlanta Pickleball Club, really developed a good relationship with them, kind of told them my idea, brought them into the conversation with the developer. So now we have people who can help market and manage this concept. They will bring in the people. It's already built into the pickleball community. So all we had to do was kind of like a Field of Dreams scenario. Like if we build the pickleball courts, they will come.
Yeah.
Maybe not the beer, but they'll come for the pickleball. And I know they like drinking beer. So
right.
And they like Elsewhere beer too, because I dropped off a bunch at the tennis courts they play at. So
amazing, dude.
Yeah.
So smart.
I didn't realize there was a pickleball court behind there. That is very smart. We have a client right now that has about 12,000 square feet of unused space. and they want to sell the building. And I said, it's in a very cold environment. It's in a very cold state. And I said, turn it into indoor pickleball. Just do it.
Yep. Yep. If they own the building, it's kind of like that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So before we wrap it up, I want to learn more about this fungus obsession of yours. And you're an amateur mycologist. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, it's a hobby. Like I use the phrase because it sounds like super official. Yeah, I just like grow mushrooms as a hobby. And so
like psychedelic mushrooms or
no, like oyster mushrooms,
okay,
like things like that. And so I'm bringing kind of, and this was just something I started doing during the pandemic. Some people decided to make bread or start a garden. I did start a garden, but I also started getting into mycology. And earlier this year, I kind of had a breakthrough, and we have done a lot of stuff with mushrooms with the company over time, just because of my interest in them. So like our company would, we have some friends in a couple of the mushroom clubs in Georgia, and we linked up with a couple, Sam Landis and his wife Cornelia. We started doing these foraging events, like a few times a year, and then we would start doing these like oyster mushroom, bag grows where customers could come and do a class, and by the end they'd have a bag, and in a couple of weeks they'd be growing oyster mushrooms. And so we kind of like we're already in that space out of just curiosity ourselves. And so the brand was kind of like going in that direction in a way, and I was all about it. Mushrooms are fungus, yeast is a fungus, so it's like you can kind of tell a story there. And I was looking for ways to kind of just like reduce costs, and like we all are. And in our beer, we've made things so much more efficient in the way that we hop the beers. We utilize horizontal tanks to reduce the amount of hop. Like we do a lot of things to reduce our inputs, but there's certain things like, water and grain you're kind of stuck to. And the largest waste that we have, and really have no way to monetize it, was our grain. And I decided to inject a jar of grain with some oyster mushroom liquid culture, which is essentially like a bunch of mushroom roots floating in liquid, and you just squirt it into a bag of this grain that's been sterilized at a high temperature, and then you essentially create like a clean petri dish for this mycelium to grow and feed on all of the spent grain. Well, you can take that spent grain after it's been fully kind of eaten up by the mushroom roots, and you can break it up and mix it with dirt or wood, depending on what the mushroom likes to feed on, and you can literally start growing food. Oyster
it becomes like a fertilizer?
No, I mean it becomes like seed. It's like seed that you can grow with. So kind of what I'm planning on doing is I had a fellow mushroom friend who bought me a commercial sterilizer, and essentially I'm going to start making grain spawn, is what it's called. And I'm going to sell that to commercial mushroom farmers. And eventually kind of my future plan is like whenever we open up a manufacturing location, immediately what we'll do is we'll also open up a grain processing facility and a mushroom fruiting facility, so that we kind of have in our waste stream, we've got three businesses going. We make the beer from the grain. We then can process the grain and sell grain spawn to other growers, or we can kind of retain it ourselves and move it into the mushroom farming room, where we then can grow food and sell mushrooms to restaurants and farmers markets, if it gets big enough, grocery stores. And then at the very end, you can take all of that waste product and you can process it into mushroom compost, which you then, you could buy that at Home Depot. I mean, that's what I put in my garden sometimes. So essentially, my goal is to take the grain that we use for beer and turn it back into dirt at the very end of the process to then plant more grain. Is kind of the idea. So just kind of this full circle economy that reduces waste, and as reducing waste and recycling and carbon capture and all this stuff starts to become more and more important over time, I think you're going to start seeing, subsidies and government money for just simply doing stuff like this. And then once I can measure the reduction in carbon by, there's probably going to be some kind of carbon credit or something like that that could exist.
Yep.
So there's, it makes sense just strictly from monetizing your waste stream perspective, but there's, I think, just tons of future money out there for kind of ideas like this. I think the government's going to want to pay people to do this kind of stuff, or at least to innovate along these some of these ideas. So that's kind of the mushroom thing.
Cool. It's one of the more unique sustainability practices I've heard, but it's really cool.
So there's another brewery here in Atlanta, Wild Heaven. I used to work there as we were raising capital for our current location, and one of the owners over there, Eric Johnson, I saw him doing this, and he was growing mushrooms for his restaurant he had in there. So that was the first time when I was like, oh, you could like grow mushrooms on this stuff. Why aren't there more people doing that? It is like it's not easy. It's like a whole nother business, but kind of for me at the beginning, I'm trying to figure out what's the minimum viable product that I can create from this that requires the least amount of resources from me. And so it's like, me and maybe a couple employees I have that are looking for some more hours, put them on an hourly to help me kind of do some of this. And so it won't take a whole lot of resources from the company. I have all the capital equipment. So it's just kind of dialing in the system, figuring out a process. I've already developed a potential market with a couple commercial growers here in Atlanta, one that sells mushrooms at the farmers market right outside of our brewery every Sunday. So yeah, I think kind of the tail end of this year will be working on that, getting that dialed in. And then also in that same space, I'm going to be building a couple indoor pickleball courts, and that's all over at the Grant Park location. So the property development company is doing a huge redevelopment of that space, and they're looking for somebody to fill a vacant suite for 2 to 3 years or so. And so I kind of came forward with this idea for how we could activate the space. So for me, I'm using it to process grain, and I'll also be building some indoor pickleball courts to increase the foot traffic down at the development. So, yeah,
dude, you are all over the place. I love it, but
yeah,
it's all over the place. But it all has a mission. It all ties back to this risk mitigation, and it's so well thought out. I mean, we got to talk more. I don't even talk to you that much. Jesus, this is great.
Yeah, I mean, we've always looked for, I guess, what we considered novel in our industry. So we've always looked for novel ways to increase revenue, reduce costs. The Elsewhere Adventure Club, like earlier this year, we went down to Patagonia. We brought down 14 people to literally do a trip Sarah and I had done back before we got the brewery open. And that's another component of the business that, you mentioned personal goals in your email, and it's like, we love to travel. That's what this business was found on. A big reason why we wanted to tie travel to the business is because we knew that we weren't going to have a lot of like free time for our own personal endeavors. So, tying kind of our personal interests and goals to the business has been a bit of a priority here at the beginning. It makes working on your business a little more enjoyable. And if something's more enjoyable, the probability of you doing it will be higher. So it just kind of, it reduces that friction to get up and get after it every day.
Right. That's awesome, man. This is totally an inspiring call. I love this episode. It's great. Cool. Tell the listeners where they can learn more about Elsewhere, about what you're doing, the Adventure Club, everything you're talking about.
Yeah. Honestly, our website, elsewherebrewing.com. That's a great place to start. Our Instagram, Elsewhere Grant Park, and then Elsewhere Greenhouse, which is the West Midtown location. Lots of indoor plants and like mushroom theme over there. So, those both have Instagrams. We have weekly live music, vinyl. We do a drag brunch once or twice a month, which is one of our wildest events.
Yeah.
And definitely is a party pretty much every month. So, yeah, website or Instagram is a great way to check us out, see what our story is, see what we do to entertain people, and what kind of beers we make.
Awesome, dude. This was really a pleasure speaking to you and getting to learn more about all this stuff you're doing. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Chris. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the True Craft Podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you are just dying to know what Chris and I look like, you can head over to YouTube for a video recording of the show. Links to cool information about our guests and other fun facts can be found in the show notes. This podcast is sponsored by Small Batch Standard, the premier financial agency built to serve the craft brewing industry. We help craft breweries grow profits through outsourced accounting, tax compliance, and growth consulting. Visit sbstandard.com today to learn more and request a discovery call.